In our first module, we covered different approaches to doing research and some of the problems with those approaches. In the second module, we're going to continue to cover some background material. The goal is that we'll be ready to dig into some of the statistics that we'll be doing in our third module. In the second module, we're going to cover basically four topics. These will form a foundation for statistics and will really help us later by building a solid base of knowledge for us to begin with. So the first of the topics will be sampling. We can divide sampling into two types, probabilistic and non-probabilistic. So probabilistic samples are really good. So every member of the population has an equal probability of being selected for the sample. We can be pretty confident that the sample reflects the population as a whole, but it can be expensive or time-consuming to get this sort of sample. So often in practice, businesses rely on non-probabilistic samples. We'll go over some of these examples in this module. So while these samples are not representative of the overall population, they can still provide valuable insight and help with decision making. I work with probabilistic samples in my academic work, the kind of stuff that goes into journals. But often non-probabilistic samples provide enough information for businesses to make better decisions, and they can be much quicker and cheaper. The second major topic that we'll cover here in Module 2 is characteristics or properties of measures. We want to make sure that measures that we gather and examine are both reliable and valid. Reliability means that the measure is stable or consistent over time and across observations. On the other hand, validity is whether the measure is actually getting at what you're trying to measure. So if you want to measure how fast you're driving, you should look at the speedometer and track your miles per hour, not look over at your RPMs. It sounds goofy in some of these simple examples that of course you would know what to look for, but in the real world where information is imperfect, you may face situations where you have variables or questions that can only really approximate what you're really looking for. And that's when this really is really important. The third topic in this module is scales. We'll talk more in depth about the different types of scales that are used. Now in business, you often need to develop your own scales based on the needs of a particular project. So it's important to be familiar with the different ones. And we'll go over them so you have a good background and can figure out, apply that sort of knowledge or the basic idea of them from like the general example to your very specific needs. Lastly, we'll cover questionnaires and questionnaire design. We'll talk about different characteristics of questionnaires and how to get the most responses and the best possible responses.